Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going over a new poll that was released by Qantas Insights, which shows a 2026 Senate matchup in the state of New Hampshire between former Republican Governor Chris Sununu and current Democratic Congressman Chris Pappas. Shows Sununu with a 9-point lead, Sununu getting 53%, Pappas getting 44%. The poll was conducted between March 17th and March 19th with a 650 person registered voters sample, a margin of error of 3.8%. So I want to do this video because this is a very, very important poll and important insight into what the 2026 Senate race could become. The article begins by saying, as New Hampshire looks ahead to the 2026 Senate race, former Republican Governor Chris Sununu holds a strong 53% to 44% lead over Democratic Congressman Chris Pappas in a hypothetical matchup. According to our latest survey, you can see the crosstabs on the site if you want to go into more information, of registered voters. While neither candidate is officially announced, both are widely expected to run, setting the stage for a pivotal contest in a battleground state. Sununu's early advantage is driven by overwhelming Republican support, 94%, a solid lead among independents, 52% to 44%, and a commanding performance among men, 59% to 39%, while women are evenly split at 48%, while Sununu holds a key advantage among non-college voters, 58%, a critical demographic in recent New Hampshire elections. This matchup reflects a broader rightward shift in the state. In 2024, Donald Trump lost New Hampshire to Kamala Harris by 2.8 points, a marked improvement from a 7.3-point defeat by Joe Biden in 2020. While New Hampshire has long been a political battleground, this data suggests shifting electoral terrain, one where Sununu's popularity and crossover appeal could make the Senate seat a formidable challenge for Democrats to defend. Yet, national dynamics remain uncertain. Trump's approval rating in the state sits at 43.8% approve, 48.5% disapprove, with deep partisan divides. He retained strong backing among Republicans, 83% approve, but struggles with independents, 37% approve, 54% disapprove, a crucial voting bloc in New Hampshire. The challenge for Republicans will be translating Sununu's personal appeal into broader GOP momentum, particularly if national headwinds intensify in 2026. New Hampshire is no stranger to political volatility, and while Sununu's early numbers are strong, the race is far from settled. If both men enter the race, Democrats will look to close the gap, while Republicans will hope Sununu's coalition holds through Election Day. So this is fascinating, and obviously, right now, I'm recording this video on March 20th, Thursday, 2025. So we have a long ways to go before this campaign really gets going, but I'm fully expecting this to be the most competitive Senate race in New Hampshire in a very, very long time, since 2016, where Kelly Ayotte ran for re-election against Democrat Maggie Hassan, who was then the governor. Hassan ended up winning by about 1,000 votes in the state. And I think if it is Sununu versus Pappas, this is going to be the closest matchup that there really could be in this Senate race. So just to give you an idea, a little background on why I think this is so important. Well, if you want to look at Sununu's history of being reelected governor, and it kind of gets into why I think it's going to be close. Senate and governor are very different when it comes to people getting elected. For instance, in 2024, we saw Kelly Ayotte win the governor's race by 9.3 points on the same ballot where President Trump lost the state of New Hampshire 51 to 48. So there's a sort of a history in New Hampshire now of the president and the governor elections not being the same party that continued in 2024. Looking back at 2022, the last time Sununu ran for re-election, he won the state by 15.5 points. This is a solid Republican win in New Hampshire, which again voted Democrat for Senate and both House seats on the same ballot. And I'll show you Chris Pappas' numbers in a second just to show you. 2020, New Hampshire, again, Chris Sununu won by 31.8% in the state of New Hampshire, 32 points almost in New Hampshire. And now let's take a look at the 2020 presidential map, shall we? New Hampshire went to Joe Biden over Donald Trump, again, by 7 points. So Sununu was able to win by 30, and yet Biden defeated Trump by 7. Now let's go back to 2018. This is the first time Sununu ran for re-election. He won by 7 points. 7-point win, a likely Republican win. And then when Sununu first got elected in 2016, on the same ballot, again, where Trump narrowly lost New Hampshire, again, I'll show you this, Hillary Clinton won the state of New Hampshire over Trump by just 0.3%. So it was very close back in 2016. But on the same ballot, Sununu won by 2.3. Every election Sununu's in, he always seems to overperform the other Republicans in the state and the Republicans nationally. So that's why it makes Sununu the best Republican in New Hampshire as a very formidable candidate. And a large part of that is the job he did as governor, where he had very high approval ratings throughout his entire terms. And it also helps his family is well known in New Hampshire politics. I said in a previous video, the Sununus and the Shaheens are the two most well-known families in New Hampshire politics, and that is certainly true, which is why Sununu is the top recruit Republicans could have in New Hampshire. But Sununu did very well on the governor's side of things. The Senate is a different story. In 2022, Maggie Hassan won re-election by 9.1 points. Again, she won by just over 1,000 votes versus Kelly Ayotte, but she was able to win by 9 points in 2022. In 2020, when Jeanne Shaheen ran for re-election last time, she won the race by 15.6 points, 15.6%. We can look at 2016 when Hassan won by 0.14%, so a super close race. 2014, Jeanne Shaheen won by 3.2. You have to go back for a Republican to win in New Hampshire to 2010 during the very good Republican night when Kelly Ayotte won by 23 points. It was a very big Republican night across the country, and that is a long ways ago now. So the Senate in New Hampshire, at least since 2016, has a history of voting either likely Democrat or, in Jeanne Shaheen's case, safe Democrat. So now the question is going to be, okay, so you essentially have Chris Sununu is the best Republican that New Hampshire Republicans could put up, and at the governor's level, New Hampshire seems to be a likely Republican state. At the Senate level, New Hampshire seems to be a likely Democratic state. So what does this mean? What happens? Well, looking at Ballotpedia, Chris Pappas has been a very long-term, you could say, politician in New Hampshire now. He first got elected. I'm going to go from the bottom and work my way up here. On Ballotpedia, he started in 2016, winning a seat for the Executive Council in District 4 against Republican Joseph Kelly Lavasser by about 4 points. I believe this is the Manchester district where Pappas is from. In 2018, Pappas then went on to run for Congress against Republican Eddie Edwards. He won a primary after the previous incumbent Democrat did not run again. Pappas went on to win the general election against Eddie Edwards by about 8 points. So that was 2018. Now we go to 2020. Republican Matt Mowers wins the primary. He faces off against Chris Pappas, and Pappas wins here in a close race, 51.3 to 46.2, about a 5-point win for Pappas. And unfortunately for the Republicans, a 5-point win for Pappas over Mowers, that's the closest this district has been ever since. Now we go to 2022. Mowers runs again, as well as Scott Brown's wife, Gail Huff Brown, but they run into President Trump's press secretary now, Caroline Leavitt. She wins the Republican primary. She pulls off a political upset, and then she faces off against Chris Pappas. Pappas wins here 54% to Leavitt's 45.9. Now the most recent election, 2024, we have the Republican who did run in the prior election, Russell Prescott, win the primary, getting 26%. He's more of a Sununu-aligned Republican, and Sununu endorsed him, I believe, in the primary as well. He faces off against Chris Pappas, and this time around, again, Pappas won 54 to 45.9. So Prescott is more of a moderate Republican along with Sununu, and he still wasn't able to make any ground against Chris Pappas. The point I'm trying to make here is Chris Pappas is a very formidable candidate in the New Hampshire's 1st district. He has not he's not won the state by under a likely Democratic margin. So you're having, in my view right now, at least not at the Senate level, you're having the strongest Democratic candidate at the House level going up against the strongest Republican candidate, Chris Sununu, at the governor level, which to me means it's going to be a very, very close and very tight race. And this new poll by Qantas Insights is obviously great news for Sununu, 53-44. This by no means that this won't change, as the article mentioned. Who knows what the country is going to be viewed like in 2026. Sununu is very popular, but when governors run for Senate, typically their approvals get a little bit of a hit because running for Washington and running for the state governor's mansion are two very different things. National Senate races become more nationalized. People get more outside spending from both parties that make the other candidate look like the worst person in the world. So that's going to knock Sununu's approval rating down a little bit. I'm sure the same thing will happen to Pappas. It's going to be a nail-biter of a race between Sununu and Pappas. Right now, though, I will say the Republicans start off with about 51 Senate seats. Democrats start off with 44. In my very early rankings of this race, Sununu versus Pappas, I do actually have Sununu flipping the seat red and narrowly winning the state. But again, it's all really contingent on can Sununu make the same arguments he did as governor, where he was able to win likely Republican and safe Republican victories. Can he continue that in a Senate race, which is going to be very, very tight and going to become more nationalized? The Democrats in New Hampshire are 100% going to use the rhetoric of this is like Sununu helping out Trump and helping out the national Republicans, which kind of hurts the Republicans because Trump lost by 7 points in 2020, lost the state in 2024 by about 3 points. And I imagine, based on the poll that said Trump was underwater, the Democrats are going to use that to try and go after Sununu and hurt Sununu's popularity. The good news for Sununu is he does have a recent track record of being a popular governor, so maybe that won't stick as much as, say, a governor who's been out of office for like 4 or 6 years. Sununu had only been out of office for about 2 years at that point. But is there a world where I think Pappas versus Sununu ends up in Pappas narrowly winning the race? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely I do. And I think it really scores the point that I think this race could potentially be, when all things are said and done, the closest race in the United States. It's almost kind of weird to imagine New Hampshire, which has not elected a Republican for Senate since 2010, having a Republican senator. But I think Chris Sununu offers the best chance for Republicans to win New Hampshire. Coincidentally, I think Chris Pappas offers the Democrats right now the best chance at keeping this seat Democrat. But you're having the two top candidates going at it, and right now Sununu has not officially announced he is running, nor has Chris Pappas, as the article mentioned, but both of them are said they're considering it and they're looking into it, and it's looking like more likely than not they're probably going to do it. Just to give you some transparency on where I stand right now, I think Pappas versus Sununu ends with Sununu winning by about a little over 1 point, but definitely not over 5. I think it goes lean Republican. Let's say Sununu decides not to run, and then it's Pappas versus another Republican like Scott Brown, for instance. Then I think this race will stay in the Democratic side. I think Pappas will win the race by about, again, over 1, under 5. It would be lean Democratic. Let's say it's not Chris Pappas for some reason. He loses the primary or decides not to run. Let's say it's Maggie Goodlander versus Scott Brown or something. I do still think it stays Democratic, but I think it's going to be under 1 point. I think Pappas is the strongest Democrat in New Hampshire. I think Chris Sununu is the strongest Republican in New Hampshire. But I think there's a lot of scenarios here where no matter how you do it, New Hampshire is going to be very, very close. And to seeing a poll like this that shows Sununu ahead is already potentially jump-starting what's going to be a very competitive 2 years in New Hampshire and the Senate race. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts or questions about this race. Who do you think would win between Sununu or Pappas? I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are below. Please remember to click subscribe as well. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.